This is Twit.
In a very interesting report, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Cisco collectively hold about $163 billion in U.S. government debt, much of it offshore, which earns them tax-free interest that's paid for by American taxpayers, according to a report this morning by Nick Mathiasen, writing for the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Nick Mathiasen, I want to welcome you to Tech News Today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on.
Now, you wrote that the U.S. government collects taxes from U.S. taxpayers and transfers it to these companies in the form of interest payments. You called the amount vast, but how much are we talking about here?
Well, I estimate the amount of interest paid to the tech companies by the U.S. government in interest on their bond investments as in the region of $325 million last year.
Interesting. Now, this is all legal, of course. You're not speculating that there's any illegality or wrongdoing, right? This is all done through legal means.
Absolutely. No, there's completely legal. This is they are seemingly playing by the rules of the international tax regime, and that just shows you how much reform is needed in that particular area.
Now, I think there's a lot of. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lance. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, it's $325 million across all the companies you looked at?
Yeah, those four. That's how much I basically calculated that on a very conservative interest rate of 0.2%. On that $160 billion worth of investments, you would get $320 million.
So that's on an annual basis?
Correct.
So I mean, it seems to me that we're talking about a rounding error for those. I mean, Apple has $150 billion offshore in their own savings, right? That's not the same money, right?
A portion of that money is invested in U.S. bonds, and so they're deriving an income out of their offshore tax pile, which is just sitting there, not being repatriated to the U.S.
So, right, that's what I kind of was, because when I read your article, I wanted to understand better, because we often, when we write about Apple earnings, they always mention cash, and they say what portion of it is offshore. So what you're saying is that pile of cash, a portion of it is actually investment in treasury bonds, so they can get payments against it from the U.S., which I guess offsets taxes that they might have to pay for money they really actually have in the U.S. Is that accurate?
Well, As I see it, I think there's an element of what you say is potentially in their kind of game plan or what have you. But as I see it, they are just sitting on huge sums of cash. They have $146 billion worth of cash, of which $111 billion is in foreign subsidiaries. Now they invest $44 billion in U.S. treasuries. They invest $54 billion in corporate bonds, and they are just earning an income. It's a hedge against inflation in a sense. It's also and it's earning them income while they kind of just sit on it and not repatriate it. So in a sense, it is a hedge against the tax they may have to pay once they come to an arrangement with the U.S. government.
I'm realizing I need a better accountant.
Yeah.
Or a few $100 billion more dollars, that might help as well. Now, is this? I mean, we talk a lot about the sort of the shell game that companies play to avoid taxes, moving their money around the world, going to countries where the taxation is more favorable, and so on. But the interest, would you characterize this as corporate welfare? Is that an accurate kind of, if not oversimplified, name for it?
Are you saying that what they do, amount of money that are receiving is welfare for corporate?
Exactly.
I wouldn't necessarily be so. Well, I'll put it in those polite terms. I mean, I do. I mean, personally, I think it's a ludicrous situation. It's mind-boggling to think that, there's a huge need for a significant amount of that cash to be repatriated in America. I know that infrastructure needs investment, schools, hospitals, what have you, and they are. I suppose that they're earning interest on it, and I think it's kind of like.
You're talking about there. So I'm a little confused here. You're talking about Apple's own money, which they've decided to invest in a way that, yes, they're going to have to pay. They're going to lower their sort of the tax oversight, but you keep talking about it as if it's not their money, and you seem bothered by the fact that they've invested in treasury bonds, so they actually have the U.S. in debt to us. Now, I just think that's very savvy. It's unfortunate because it kind of feels like maybe Americans are paying twice. They buy the hardware, then they through the government pay Apple again. But when push comes to shove, it is. I mean, say yes or no to this question: is this Apple's money?
It's profits that earnings that they've made. But listen, I think they like a lot of other companies in the world are playing a game of brinkmanship and are giving and then there's a big standoff. I mean, the price of there is a certain price you have to pay for civilization, and that is called tax. If you want decent schools, roads, hospitals, and if you want an educated workforce, if you want universities, you need to pay. Pay for that, and these companies are denying that. We all have to pay a little bit of money, otherwise there's chaos out there, and these companies are choosing not to do that. Now, obviously, they have made money.
What is Apple paying in taxes on it?
It's also European. Sorry, just to say, it's also money that they've made in Britain, in other European centres that they're parking in these jurisdictions. So it is their money, but at the same time, these companies do need to pay a price for civilization.
Now, at least one of these companies says the problem is, the reason they're doing this is that U.S. corporate taxes are too high. And I think on paper, at least, taxes are higher than other countries, but the amount actually paid by U.S. companies is much lower, probably because of loopholes and offshoring and stuff like this. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the U.S. Corporation tax rate is the highest in the industrialized world at 35%. And, you compare that to the UK, which is 21%. So, yeah, there is an issue there. And I think, ultimately that will be lower. But and as you correctly say, the Congress a couple of years ago found the effective tax rate paid by U.S. corporates is 12.1%. So, and as you say, it's down to tax breaks and various other measures. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Citizens for Tax Justice found that the US's most profitable companies paid 19%. So, there is reform needed in the US tax system and the international tax system. But at the same time, as this report shows, that the tech companies, and not just them, but other sectors are getting an income out of this situation.
Well, I want to thank you, Nick, for coming on and explaining this situation to us. And also I would encourage others to go read your report at thebureauinvestigates.com.
That's very kind of you, and thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. And you can also find Nick on Twitter at Nick Mathiasen.